This video provides an overview of the EFT process set up for Sage 100 by Munjal White Consulting. Your system settings may be different, but the general process will be the same. Here are the high-level steps. Pay your vendors using normal check processing procedures, either manual check or check printing tasks. Print the check on white paper, and then post the payments. Run the script from the My Task menu to create a file of payments made. Use RBA's The Scheduling software to format the file to one that can be uploaded to your bank website. Upload the modified file to your bank website. Vendor notifications will be sent automatically at night. And finally, transfer the total payment between bank codes in Sage 100. You may want to pause the video to make a few notes on this process. If you get lost in the details, you may want to refer back to this high-level overview in order to find your way back. Keep in mind that this video and the screenshots most likely will not match your setup exactly. You might use different bank codes, Canadian dollar versus US dollars, different company codes, different file names, or different file paths, etc. Refer to the documentation that was provided to you as part of your EFT setup project with Munjal White. Before you process any vendor payments, you should check that your vendors have been set up correctly. Although the information can be updated after the payments are posted, the logical first step is to ensure that the vendors are set up correctly. Let's go to Accounts Payable, Main, Vendor Maintenance, and select a vendor that you want to pay by EFT. Once the vendor is selected, click on the EFT Info button that has been added for you. The EFT Info button has been added to a select group of users who should have access to this information. Update the vendor's banking information, bank, transit, and account. No dashes or spaces should be used. Update the email address too. This is the email address that will be used to advise the vendor automatically that a payment has been processed. Click OK to save your banking and email changes. On a side note, be sure that the vendor name does not contain any quotation marks or commas in their name. This has been known to cause problems when exporting the file. In order to make it more efficient to select invoices from EFT vendors for payment altogether, we're going to use the Sort field. Go to the Additional tab of Vendor Maintenance. In the Sort field, either type in or select from a lookup list EFT. By the way, if there is a lookup list and you want to use this for identifying other payment methods, you can do that in Custom Office UDT Maintenance. Now that the vendor has been set up correctly, it's time to create some payments. Invoices should already be posted and available for payment and visible within the vendor inquiry screen. The process that we follow to process these payments within Sage 100 is the same, whether you are printing an actual check or you're printing a white paper check, as we call it. We're not going to demonstrate this option, but it's possible to create your EFT payments through the manual check entry screen. You may choose to print the white paper check, the Quick Print button, or simply use the Next Number button to assign the check number. As long as you are using bank code E, or whatever bank code has been set up for your EFT process, the end result will be the same. Keep in mind that the bank code letter will be used to select the payments to be sent to the bank and to email notifications to the vendor. Most of our customers use the check run approach to select invoices for payment, as there tends to be many invoices and many vendors being paid at the same time. That's what we're going to do next. Let's go to the Check Printing and Electronic Payment menu and select Invoice Payment Selection. Before making any selections, you'll want to check that the Clear button in the bottom left corner of the screen is grayed out and can't be selected. This indicates that a selection has not already been started, nor has check printing been started. If the Clear button is dark, you should review what's already been started and finish that off before working on selecting invoices to be paid by EFT. The EFT check run should be done separately from other check runs. If you're ready to continue, modify the date settings and discount date settings based on what you want. The key to this screen for EFT purpose is to change the option for sort field to select sort field equals to EFT. Once you're happy with the screen, you have two choices. You can click on the Proceed button and all the invoices matching the criteria entered will be selected for payment. You'll have a chance to modify or maintain the invoices and vendors selected. The second option is for you to click the Select button in the top right-hand corner of the screen. This will display a list of all invoices that match the criteria entered on the previous screen. You can click to select an invoice, Control-click to select other invoices, or Shift-click to select a range of invoices. These are standard Windows conventions. You can use the green checkmark icon on the right-hand side to select all of those invoices, or the red checkmark to deselect all invoices already selected at this time. Once you're happy with your selection, click OK to save your work and leave the Select Invoices for Payment screen. Once back on the first screen where you entered the dates, etc., you can make changes to the dates and then click Select again to add more to the list. If you do not want to add more invoices to the list as a bulk selection, you're done. Click on the Print icon on the bottom right. Assuming you have used the Select button to select individual invoices and vendors, do not, I repeat, do not click on the Proceed button, as it will select more invoices based on the criteria entered. The Print button will generate a list of invoices and vendors that you have selected for payment. The report is called the Invoice Payment Selection Listing. Sage considers this an auto report, and if you click Print, it will save the report to Paperless Office. Once you've reviewed the Invoice Payment Selection listing, you can make changes. Go to the Check and Electronic Payment Maintenance task. Use the flashlight icon to see a list of vendors that have been selected for payment. Notice that each of the vendors selected has entry number 1. For the most part, we don't see any other entry numbers unless you've set up vendors for separate checks. If you enable this on the vendor maintenance screen, you might see entry 2 or higher if a vendor had more than one invoice selected for payment. Again, it's rare to see anything other than entry 001. If you don't want to pay a vendor as part of this EFT run, then select the vendor from the lookup list and then select Delete in the bottom right-hand corner. You can add vendors to this list by entering or searching for the vendor and then entering 001 in the entry number field in the bottom grid. Use the yellow Select Invoices icon to select more than one invoice at a time for this vendor, or use the regular lookup button to select one invoice at a time. Click Accept to select the new vendor that you've added. You can also add or remove individual invoices from the vendor. Use the flashlight to look up the list of vendors selected, select the vendor, and then in the bottom grid that displays, select an invoice and use the red X icon to remove the invoice, or go to a blank invoice number field and use the lookup to select additional invoices that were not already selected. Once you're happy with the selections that were made, you can click on the Print icon to print the Invoice Payment Selection listing again to make sure that the list is valid, or to give to your supervisor for approval. Assuming you're happy with the list of invoices selected for payment, go to the Check and Electronic Payment Processing task. In some earlier versions of Sage 100, this may be called check printing. There are a few things to check or change on this screen. The bank code should be set to E, or whatever the appropriate bank code is for your EFT payments. The form code is usually EFT. You can use a lookup button if it's not already set correctly. If ever prompted, be sure to select the template of plain. Check that the printer is the correct printer for white paper. We don't want to actually print these white paper checks on check stock. Once you're happy with the settings, click the Print button to print these white paper checks. Since these white paper checks are normally for internal purposes, they are usually attached to the invoices being paid and filed as if they were a check stub. After printing the white paper checks, the system will confirm the last check number printed, select OK, and then you'll be prompted to print the check register. Select Print, and assuming the data looks correct, make a note of the number of checks printed and the total dollar amount. You'll want to verify that this matches what eventually gets uploaded to your bank website. Close the check register PDF and proceed through the prompts to update or post the check register and also the daily transaction register. Once the payments have been posted, we need to run a quick script that will create a list of payments posted. The name or location of the script may vary for you. Check the EFT documentation that was provided to you. If you use the standard desktop for your Sage 100 system, you won't see what I see. Instead, it will most likely be listed in your favorites, or maybe a clickable icon on your Windows desktop or a Windows folder structure. In my case, I use the classic desktop and it's on the My Tasks folder. I see a folder called EFT, and within that I see a task that will allow me to select the Canadian dollar payments for my ABC company. When I select the task, I'm prompted to enter the bank code letter, usually bank code E, and then the check date. Now notice that the format of entering the date is year, 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 month, month, day, day, even if your computer settings are different. Once the script selects the payments, a message will display confirming the number of payments or checks that were selected and the location of the file. The number of payments should match what you noted on the check register earlier. Make a note of the location of the file. You'll need this again in the next step. If there are problems with the number of payments selected, for example, you've reversed one of the payments but it's still showing selected, you can manually edit the file that was created before it's processed in the next step. Keep in mind that the vendor email notification is automatic and cannot determine if a payment has been reversed. In a case like this, you may want to change the vendor's EFT email address to make it your email address so that the vendor is not notified with erroneous payment information. Once the EFT payments are processed tonight, then tomorrow go back and change the EFT email address back to the correct one for the vendor. The next step is to take that file that was created by the script and reformat it into the way that your bank needs it. Each bank format is different, and the file specifications may be different from shown here. Be sure to refer to your EFT documentation that was provided to you to make sure that the settings are correct. Although the folder names and locations may be different, the general process flow is the same no matter which Canadian bank you use and their specific file format requirements. Access a scheduler software that has been installed on your Windows workstation. From your Windows Start menu, find the folder for the scheduler and then select the scheduler program. In my case, when I installed the program, a shortcut was added to my Windows desktop. When you launch the software, you'll be prompted to enter a user logon and password. These have been provided in your EFT documentation. Press Enter or click on the house icon to accept the user logon and password entered. Depending on whether you have a current release of the scheduler software or an older one, your screen may look different. Select the name EFT Tasks and then select the appropriate folder. Depending on whether you process EFT payments for more than one currency or more than one Sage company code, you may see additional folders listed. In my case, I have only one company in the scheduler program, so it's already selected that by default. Leave the scheduler import selected. You can change or leave the set date as is. The import program will ignore this anyway, as it's the check date that was entered in Sage that will be transmitted to the bank. Click the Prepare Batch button. On the right-hand side, you'll see a confirmation of the number of payments processed. That should match your edit notes from the check register in Sage earlier. Click Preview Report to see a summary of the payments. The report will display. The number of payments in dollar amount should match your check register or the edited total of what you want to process. You may want to print a copy of this report for your records. Click the printer icon from the top. Depending on the version of the scheduler program, this screen may be different. Ensure the correct printer is selected and then click the printer icon to print the report. When finished, the report will close and you'll be back at the scheduler. The next step is to click the Create EFT File button. It will be rare that you need to change the file type. This should have been set correctly during testing and should default correctly. A file will be created. Confirm that the number of payments and the total dollar amount are correct. Make a note of the location and file name. Depending on your setup, the file may be called transmit.txt or may be a file name with a date and time on it. Click the Skip Notifs button. Notifications will be sent automatically from the server at night using the Visual Cut software. You'll be prompted again warning you that the notifications have not been created. Select Yes to skip the notification task. You may be presented with a message that a backup was done. Whether the backup was successful or not, the file has been created. If the backup was not done, that's okay. You'll want to get comfortable with the location and nature of the files. Using the file location that you noted earlier, go to that folder using Windows Explorer. In my case, there are two files that will have similar names. The .txt file is the one that will be uploaded to the bank website. It's formatted the exact way that the bank needs it. The CSV file contains the payment information for future reference, but is not in a format that the bank can use. Check the date and time of the file to make sure it's the right one. If you open the text file, it may look confusing, but you should do a spot check to make sure that the vendor names and the number of vendor lines look appropriate for what you intend to pay. Close the file when you're done reviewing it. The next step is for you to upload the file to your bank website. Your bank should have provided you instructions on how to upload a file through their website. If you have questions or experience problems with this step, you'll need to reach out to your account manager or the bank's help desk to assist. The last step is to update Sage 100 Banking. You'll recall that you posted these EFT payments to bank code E. The reason that we use a different bank code from your main bank code is that we want to see the payments in total. If we uploaded 20 payments to the bank, we'd see one entry in your bank statement, so we want Sage 100 Bank Reconciliation to show the same one entry. Go to General Ledger, Main, Transaction Journal Entry, and create a new batch of transactions, assuming your GL is configured to use batches for this type of transaction, and use the Next Number button. In the Source Journal field, enter TX for transfer, and then click on the Next Number button to get the next journal number. The structure of this journal should have been set up for you already. Its intention is to record the total payment from bank code A, or whatever your main bank code is, and transfer it to bank code E. The date of the entry should be the payment date. In the bottom right of the screen, in the Transfer Number field, you may want to enter the confirmation number provided by your bank website when you uploaded the file. Go to the line screen, and the first line should be started for you already, showing the transfer to bank code E. The document reference field is a required field, so enter something like EFT in that field. Ensure the payment date matches what you entered on the header of the entry, that is, the payment date. Enter the total amount of the payment, accept the entry, and then print and update the transaction journal. Once this is done, the main bank account will have a single entry for the total of the EFT payments, and bank code E should have a net of 0, being the checks posted minus the amount transferred, and that completes the EFT process. Thanks for watching. If you have any questions on the contents of this video, please reach out to our support team by sending an email to websupport@munjowhite.com.